right. So I am Benjamin Day,
I'm Stephanie Nakajima.
and this is Medicare for All, the podcast for everybody who needs healthcare. And we are bringing it to you today from the United States and from Denmark.
Also Copenhagen, Denmark.
Yes.
I'm here today. I'm here visiting a terminally ill family member. Unfortunately, my husband's mother is very ill, and I was very lucky to be able to come here at all. I take 3 flights, 2 corona tests, one right before I got on the plane and one right after I got off. So actually, an airport is like the safest place to be right now because everybody's been tested.
I'm going to move into one.
I think I did for 24 hours there, so would not recommend it. So today we have a pretty exciting episode. We're talking about Rep. Pramila Jayapal reintroducing the Medicare for All Act last week with a record-breaking number of co-sponsors. We were really happy with how it all went down, and we're going to talk a little bit today about co-sponsors, who's on the bill, who's not quite yet, who we expected to be, how the launch went down, like how the representatives who spoke in favor of the bill, and some of the more interesting stories that came out of that, and the organizing effort that went into getting this record number of co-sponsors. So just to frame it to start, last session in 2018, we launched the bill with 106 original co-sponsors. And of course, that itself was a record broken from the last session, HR 676. And I actually cannot remember. Do you remember, Ben, how many co-sponsors we had on HR 676? Significantly less.
I mean, I've been working at healthcare now for, 7 years, 8 years? I remember sessions where we didn't get more than 30-something co-sponsors on the bill. I don't remember what it was like in the very last session before Pramila Jayapal took it over. Because you remember Keith Ellison had the bill for a little while, but we are in like totally different territory compared to just a handful of years ago. So
exactly. I think I remember something like 60, 68, 69, I think.
And I've seen worse. I remember worse. So
we should get some credit for being there to envision a better future for this bill from the beginning. And so, last week again, we broke the original co-sponsor record. We launched with 112 co-sponsors, so we picked up 2 immediately after the launch. So, we're actually already up to 114, and it kind of feels like we're on our way to breaking last session's final co-sponsor tally of 118. So that was after 2 full years of organizing on the bill. So Ben, do you think that this is a good co-sponsor number to start with?
Yeah, well, it sure beats like 35 or 36 co-sponsors, which I'm telling you, I remember this, and it wasn't that many years ago. So I think it is a testament to how far the movement has come. But also, you do have to remember that usually we don't get a lot of co-sponsors between the end of one session and the beginning of the next. I mean, it's literally just like a few weeks, and it's a few frenzied weeks during which like every bill is being introduced into Congress. I mean, the new bill number 1976 or whatever, that means that literally almost 2,000 bills were filed before it to the House of Representatives. So it's not the greatest usually organizing time because every issue-based organization is pushing for the same thing. So usually there's a handful of reps who actually do support Medicare for All. You don't get their staff to press the yes button in time before the original co-sponsor launch. So we always get more that are kind of with us already, but they just didn't go through the process of signing on. But also, it's just like, there's not that much organizing time between the end of the last bill and the start of this one. So I thought there was some surprises at the beginning of this session with this bill drop. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And a memory device I've used, because it took me forever to remember HR 1384, and I was sort of sad to see it go because now I can remember finally remember the number. And 1976, it's like a year in recent memory. And so the big things that happened in that year was the Montreal Olympics, the Muppet Show debuted, Jimmy Carter was elected to the presidency, and also Star Wars started filming in Tunisia.
Yeah. And let's not forget, it was a 200-year anniversary of the Declaration of Independence and the American Revolution, 1776. So it's like the bicentennial.
Whoa, you're
yeah,
right.
we landed on a good one. I almost wish it was like 1979, which is when I was born, and that would be really the best and easiest to remember.
Well, hopefully one of those events triggers a memory for you, so you can help
Exactly.
1976.
So, Stephanie, we were talking about some surprises at this bill drop, just in terms of the new co-sponsors. What really struck you just browsing over the co-sponsor list at the very beginning?
Yeah, well, the one that had me dancing in my living room at 10 p.m. when I got the email was, of course, Frank Pallone, the chair of the Energy and Commerce Committee, who not only co-sponsored the bill for the first time ever, and he's, definitely after the Ways and Means, this is one of the most powerful committees, and he's one of the most powerful chairs, but he also made a commitment to hold a hearing on Medicare for All in the committee. And I think that was just a huge win for all of the organizers who have been organizing him relentlessly for the last, for the last many years, actually.
Right. This is a Jersey
yeah.
rep.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. New Jersey.
Yeah. Yeah, and for people who, like me, don't really follow, at least, when I first heard about energy and commerce, I was like, well, that doesn't sound like a very important committee for healthcare, but that actually is the healthcare committee in Congress. It's just poorly named for our purposes. So, were there other new sign-ons we picked up for the first time just when the bill was being dropped, Stephanie? Or
so just one more side note about the committees. We did actually gain 2 committee chairs this session. One in addition to Frank Pallone, Ted Deutsch. And so that actually leaves, Medicare for All has to go through a number of committees of jurisdiction for it to get onto the floor for a vote. And this means that the only committee of jurisdiction for which we do not have the chair on the bill is Richard Neal.
Right. Our very own Richard Neal here in Western Massachusetts, who is the chair of the Ways and Means Committee.
It's a burden.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're coming for you, Richie. But that is pretty actually shocking that of the 7 committees of jurisdiction we have to go through, 6 of them are chaired by Medicare for All co-sponsors. So it really is, I feel like our co-sponsor list is breaking into leadership and kind of breaking into the folks who are really running the House and passing through healthcare legislation.
Yeah, that has been, I think, the exciting thing about the developments of the last couple of years is a couple of really key committee members, Lloyd Doggett and Tony Cardenas, also a new member as well. And yes, so there was new sign-ons from established members. Mike Quigley, over a decade in Congress representing Chicago's North Side. Ted Deutsch, as I just said, ethics chair from Florida. And Gregorio Sablon, North Mariana Islands. I actually thought he was on last session, but it didn't. The co-sponsor didn't say list.
I think he's a non-voting member as well in Congress, unfortunately. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Colonialism. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Forgot about that. The colonies.
And yeah, of course, so Tony Cardenas as well. And then we had these really new first years so that we got to actually see be inducted into Congress, and then also on top of that sign the Medicare for All bill, 8 of them, right? So Jamal Bowman, Mondaire Jones, Richie Torres, Cory Bush, Teresa Lager Fernandez, Nikema Williams, who is replacing John Lewis, Marie Newman, who ousted the anti-abortion candidate, Dan Lipinski. He was like one of the last holdouts, who he was a Democrat who did not support abortion, and Sarah Jacobs. So we picked up a bunch of really new, strong, not just like, people who are signing on because they've been like really pushed, but people, I feel a lot of those candidates are real, true Medicare for All supporters. So that's pretty exciting as well. Ben, so that was the good news. What about the bad news? Like, who have we lost, and who did we expect to get on and didn't?
Well, not many losses. We have about 5 reps who were co-sponsors last session who have not signed on this session yet. But as I kind of mentioned up top, this is pretty common, pretty routine that there will be a handful of reps who don't jump in time to be counted as original co-sponsors, but they are going to sign back on eventually. They're just processing all 2,000 of the bills that have just been introduced and trying to co-sponsor all of them. So that does include Vicente Gonzalez, Zoe Lofgren, Joyce Beatty, and Tim Ryan. The only one that we worry about is Jared Golden in Maine, who we have heard that he's told his constituents he is not going to re-sign on again. I don't know how you explain that one to your constituents. It's like, oh yeah, I supported this life-saving issue last year, but now I change. And usually you can kind of look at their political setting and whether they're being challenged by Republicans, have viable Republican challengers. This is Maine, which is kind of a weird purplish state that elects Tea Party Trump-like governors, and has these centrist Republicans in the Senate. And anyway, we won't go into it all, but I think Golden is going to take some real organizing to get back on. The other 4 we don't have enough information about. And then the last rep who I'd mention is Kwayise Mafume, who replaced Elijah Cummings. And Elijah Cummings was a co-sponsor on the bill, obviously. And Mafume has not yet signed on, but again, I wouldn't count them out yet as potential co-sponsors. So we have a really small, low-hanging fruit list of 5 or 6 reps. But by and large, almost everyone, I mean, you've already heard that everyone who's a co-sponsor who ran for re-election won their re-election. So we have a lot of consistency, and we had very, very few drop off at the very start of the bill reintroduction.
Yep, what a relief.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of bill reintroduction, so there was actually an event. Every time the bill is introduced, there's a big press conference. Usually it's on the quad in Capitol Hill. It's outside. They have, people, there's a rally with people holding signs in the background. A bunch of reps get up and talk. Obviously, this was the first kind of virtual bill press conference. It was all done online and Zoom. You can see which reps know how to use Zoom and which don't, which is always fun. But I have to make a confession, Stephanie. Usually the bill drop press conference is very boring. It's very it's
I almost
even for
didn't
me
listen to it.
Yeah, and this is my whole work. This is my life. It's usually the same people giving the same speeches. And maybe if you're new to the movement or you're new to those people in those speeches, it's exciting. But for me,
I didn't hear the Bernie Sanders we're the only country in the developed world who doesn't have. I didn't hear that enough. So now let's
hammer it home a few more times.
Really dry, exactly. So
everyone gets the same talking points and kind of reiterates them. And they're all, it's always people I like and admire. But this was, I didn't expect to be surprised by this press conference, but I was actually surprised, and it turned out to be really impactful. And there was a few nuggets in there that were really, they pointed to some changes happening in our movement and some breakthroughs, I think, that we're on the verge of. So why don't we start with the reps who spoke at who kind of gave testimony at the press conference, which also ended up with some surprises in there. Stephanie, were there any of the reps who talked to really stuck out to you in particular?
Yeah, I always feel like the reps who give their personal stories, and I'm actually kind of surprised that, that's become really a thing. I feel that reps like to stay in the safe area of policy sometimes with these things. And so for the ones that did sort of open up and talk about their personal histories and struggles with healthcare, I thought it really made an impression on me. I remembered what they said. So one of them was Nikema Williams, an Atlanta rep actually, who she talked about how she chose not to receive medical care after a dangerous car accident that she was in because the visit to the emergency room would be too expensive, and she knew she couldn't afford it. And she also, talked about her struggles to pay for her mom's treatment as she battled stage 4 cancer in the final years of her life. And just going through, the end of life process right now with my husband, I can tell you that that is the last thing you want to be dealing with right now. And so that was, that hit.
Right.
And then Cori Bush also gave, this woman ran for Congress without health insurance. And she talked about dealing with, she was admitted to the hospital last August thinking, she had pneumonia-like symptoms. She thought she might have COVID. And she's still dealing with the bills that she incurred from that visit. And it's just amazing. It's just amazing to finally get some real people in Congress who may have had some health insurance insecurity or, not nearly entering the millionaire status of the average salary range or income for most reps. And I think that's just really nice to get some sort of working class people in Congress, because then they can tell stories like this, and you can feel that that Medicare for All is something close to their heart, actually.
Yeah, that does strike. I mean, just his whole family basically went without health insurance, including Tony growing up. Um, so I thought he gave a really powerful testimony about how Medicare is kind of the answer for the communities that he represents. So those two also stuck out to me.
Yeah, when he was speaking, I was like, this isn't the guy who just co-sponsored this
Right.
session, right? Like, he just sounded like this came from such a deep place of, long-standing support that it really surprised me to find out that somebody could sign on this session and really feel that way. So,
And again, whenever anything like this happens, I think I say this every podcast, but in my mind, I see the Democratic consultants like behind the scenes being like, "Oh no, you can't run on Medicare for all," even though probably in his heart he knows this is the right thing to do. And all of that just
right.
came out as soon as he was given a microphone and made the decision to sort of dive in. But also, the more co-sponsors we get, I think the more acceptable it becomes to sort of become a leader on this. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually know the rep in my district in Georgia, the first Democrat in decades in this seat. What is her name? I can't even remember her name now. This is awful. But she is definitely a Medicare for All supporter, but she's not. She's not ready. She hasn't really been pushed from her district yet to come out. And I think she's a little bit, because she's in very much so a newly swing district, right? Newly swung to the Democrats. And so, yeah, and that is just I think part of our responsibility is ensuring that there is a huge base in the district that can, really see Medicare for All through, I guess, in these places to make a lot of the reps in swing districts feel safe.
Right.
Yeah, so the other, I thought, sort of big news, but sort of underreported or not really, we haven't really talked about this. I haven't heard a lot of people talking about the fact that I think we've gotten the first national endorsement from a hospital CEO on Medicare for All. Dr. Eric Dixon, he's the CEO of UMass Memorial, the hospital system. Tell us, Ben, what did he say and what are the implications for this?
Yeah, well, I would like to take credit because he's from Massachusetts. I actually didn't do anything. I don't know this guy. So this was, to me, this is actually a really important and probably often overlooked part of our fight to come. Um, I have this feeling that if the entire hospital industry opposes Medicare for all, it is going to be very, very hard to win. I mean, this is one of the reasons people. I know we do a lot of back padding for like not allowing the Affordable Care Act to be replaced, resisting, even when Republicans held the House and the Senate and the presidency, and they were committed to repealing the ACA, it didn't happen. And I know there was a lot of great grassroots organizing, but hospitals were also opposing repealing the Affordable Care Act, and hospitals are incredibly powerful in their districts. They're often some of the largest employers in the district, and obviously they have the ear of their reps when it comes to healthcare. So, I was really, he gave a very straightforward case for Medicare for all from the perspective of a hospital. Obviously, he said it was bad for the patients, the current healthcare system, but he also said, the reason that healthcare costs are so high in the United States compared to other countries is that insurance companies impose these massive administrative burdens on hospitals. The wording he used was that there are hundreds of different insurance companies with hundreds of different rates to thousands of different providers. And there are thousands of people who do nothing but create administrative burdens for providers through pre-authorization processes, denial of claims that then force the providers to go back and redocument and resubmit their complaints. And he said that's about 25% of our healthcare costs. So you can see from the perspective of a hospital that they feel that they are just being burdened by they have to spend all this time and money, wasting time and money that has nothing to do with giving you better health care, just to satisfy the insurance industry. And mostly what the insurance industry is trying to do is to stop you from getting access to care in the first place, right? So
Yeah.
it's like a byproduct of the insurance company trying to make money by giving less care is this massive administrative waste and burden on hospitals. So I don't know what
Paying
you think, Stefan.
25% of the cost of healthcare, that's from a patient's perspective, that's rationing.
Yeah,
That's
that's
money
totally
that should be
rationing.
going to our healthcare. Yeah.
Yeah, or theft, arguably. I mean, it's like
Yes.
it's money that gets spent but taken from patients, right? It gets
Yes.
thrown to all these paper pushing efforts. So I don't know, Stephanie. What do you think about? I kind of feel like we are going to need more hospital CEOs
Yeah.
on board. As much as I hate to admit it, we'll need. Let's not say CEOs, but we're going to need more hospitals. Eric Dixon had spoken about favorably about Medicare for all once before. I think it was during Elizabeth Warren's primary campaign. He kind of was quoted in the press, and I assumed he went back to his board and they smacked him around a little bit, and they're like, "Hey, you can't say things like this in public. We're the hospital board, and you might hurt our funding sources or blah 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 blah." But clearly, he's been given the green light by his institution to advocate for Medicare for all.
Yep.
So I think we're going to need more of those
Love
to
to know
kind
the
of.
backroom politics on that.
Oh God, yeah, that would be interesting. So do you? I don't know. What do you think, Stephanie? Agree?
Yeah.
Disagree?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think from a strategic perspective, we really need to divide our enemies a little
Right.
bit. They're very powerful, and they
Mm-hmm.
can't. And there are really legitimate reasons why they would be in opposition to each other. Just what you laid out there about
Mm-hmm.
billing and the struggles over that within the hospital system. And so I think that there's definitely an opportunity for a cleavage there. And
Mm-hmm.
on top of that, I think there's a lot of safety net hospitals and hospitals that aren't really being reimbursed fairly because of just like weird market incentives. And so
Yeah.
there actually should be, and it's not just like, oh, wouldn't it be great if the hospitals were on side? Actually, there's a lot of reasons that hospitals would
Yeah.
be supportive of Medicare for all. And so it's absolutely not like a lost cause, I think, for us to try to organize hospitals. And then when I think about like the power that hospitals have, they're actually quite close to doctors in that sense. I mean, when I think about like in Massachusetts, we had a safe staffing ballot initiative that the nurses ran to get safe staffing sort of limits and protocols here in Mass, and the hospitals not wanting to give in and hire more nurses and actually have safe staffing, made these really like bad faith arguments about what the consequences would be, and they told people it would harm patients and it would close down hospitals and that kind of thing. And so this really uncontroversial patient safety measure became it was very easy to defeat it because of the concerns about hospital closures and the things that would hurt patients, and hospitals just have a lot of money to throw at that kind of thing. And so I think that it's
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
I
it's
mean
really
the health insurance industry is actually not that big of an industry when you think about it, but the hospital industry is a huge industry.
yeah.
And I think about how the American Medical Association had joined this anti-Medicare for All group. The Partnership for America's Healthcare Future, this very Orwellian named group that exists only to defeat Medicare for All. And then, due to some amazing organizing by like our allies at Physicians for National Health Program, they forced the AMA to pull out of that coalition.
Yeah,
Um,
puny
they
government.
they had a vote within the AMA on Medicare for All that they actually lost narrowly, but it was so close. It was 40 something to 50 something that the AMA felt they couldn't alienate half their membership. And I think we need to see the same thing with the hospital industry. We need to see especially the safety net hospitals who are treating low income communities, Medicaid patients, really are struggling to get by financially in this system, start coming out for Medicare for All and making it hard for the American Hospital Association to just be, all out 100% in this battle against Medicare for All. So there was one, aside from this hospital nugget, which again, we have never seen a hospital CEO speak out almost anywhere in behalf of Medicare for All. But also, there's never really been a prominent racial justice advocate or organizer who spoke at the Medicare for All press conference. And I feel like these two movements, which have so much overlap with each other, have generally kind of traveled in parallel, but not touching that much courses. Stephanie, could you tell us a little bit about the racial justice component of this press conference?
Yeah, I was really excited to see the co-founder of Black Lives Matter Global Network, blacklivesmatter.com, Patrice Cullors, who spoke at the press conference. She referenced Medicare's desegregation of hospitals, talked about how, with Medicare for All, we can move closer to racial justice in healthcare and racism as a public health crisis, COVID-19, and how COVID-19 has obviously made these disparities much worse. And she also talked about a little bit about her personal story, being a patient herself and a mother, having her symptoms ignored and her pain mismanaged while giving birth. And those are things, of course, that Medicare for All will not solve by itself. And there's just a lot of racism embedded in the healthcare delivery system that's sort of divorced from the insurance component. But when you have a Medicare for All system, you at least resolve the inequalities in insurance, and then you hopefully are able to create an infrastructure where you can actually start to hold providers a little bit more accountable for the way that they treat patients. And so, it was just so good to hear, to see somebody from the Black Lives Matter network really speak in favor of Medicare for All. And yes, historically, there hasn't been a close relationship between Black Lives Matter and Medicare for All, but maybe this is a sign of things to come.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that there will be. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to close out, how did this amazing event and this record-breaking number of co-sponsors, how did this all happen? Did it just happen overnight? Did all these legislators just decide to sign on when they had all these other bills competing for their attention at the same time? We just wanted to talk a little bit about the organizing effort that's been going on for months that really got us here. Ben, how do we do this?
Well, I'll pull back the veil a little bit, not all the way maybe, but there is a national coalition of organizations who meet to basically all the groups nationally that work on Medicare for All meet monthly, and we try to, as best we can, coordinate all of our strategy and our campaign work. And we knew the bill drop was coming up, so pushing to get as many original co-sponsors at the very beginning as possible was a real priority. And I don't, when Rep. Jayapal's office said that they wanted to have a majority of the Democratic caucus on before they even introduced the bill. To be honest, I was not sure it could be done. I thought we would probably fall short, and then we would introduce it, and then we'd have to keep pushing afterwards. But there was some extraordinary organizing in, when you see 114 co-sponsors, that means that there was organizing in 114 districts across the country. And a lot of it was done by, groups like Healthcare Now, National Nurses United, Public Citizen, Progressive Democrats of America, DSA, Our Revolution, on and on and on and on, all of our allied groups. And, we had sort of like you see inside Congress, they have what's called a whip list. This is like a congressional term that we now kind of use for grassroots organizing as well. A whip list is, I guess it sounds terrible, right? It's like you're literally whipping people into behavior. This is like when leadership wants a bill to be passed, then they'll have their list of everyone they need to basically harass to get on the bill. But they do it by threatening them, and we do it by organizing people in their districts who are actually impacted by the bill, which I think is a better way. It's less whipping and more, maybe we need to rename it. It's like the organized list or something. But yeah. Okay. You can keep your whips. Do you take them to your district office meetings with the...
Yeah, just keep them on my belt.
Exactly. Well, that would probably be effective. It's hard to say no to someone with a whip. And you might even get it through security if there's not too much metal. So, but yeah, without all the nitty-gritty details, I can tell you that, each week we would kind of see who groups, local grassroots groups, had succeeded in getting on board the bill. And we would go to the next one on the list and go to the next one on the list. And we had kind of, everyone was prioritized from like the easier to the harder folks. And, but by all reports, it was apparently easier to get reps back on the bill this year than it has been in almost any year in the past. I don't know, Stephanie, do you have any sense of why that is? That, it didn't take moving heaven and earth and like massive actions to get a lot of these reps back on, or to get them on for the first time?
I was honestly a little surprised. I had a fear that we were actually going to go backwards. When Hillary Clinton lost in 2016, it was actually really easy for reps to sign on to Medicare for All for the first time, because they weren't. There wasn't this like same top down, the Democrats in power, and the sort of expectation that they would fall in line as the ruling party. Because we were in the defense, it was sort of easy to play, resistance politics. Right. But now we have Joe Biden in the White House. He has been explicitly against Medicare for All, said he was going to veto it and all that. And co-sponsoring Medicare for All is a bit of a rebuke to your party leader, who happens to be the president. Right. And so I think that I was a little afraid that would put a dampening effect on the whole Medicare for All co-sponsorship effort, but it seems like it didn't at all. And that I think that it's actually really the sustained organizing that has been done, not just the last 3 months, obviously, but over years, to grow a grassroots infrastructure that can start to really generate accountability measures for our reps.
Yeah, and I've been around long enough that I saw this happen when the Affordable Care Act was passed. This is it is easier for reps to sign on to bills like Medicare for All, just like you were saying, when you're in the opposition party and you don't actually have control over what you're doing. And as soon as, Obama was elected and there was a Democratic House and Senate, I think we did pretty good with co-sponsorship during the ACA fight. But after the ACA passed, it was really like, let's circle the wagons, let's defend this bill. For me to, sign onto the Medicare for All bill is essentially saying like the ACA didn't do enough, which no one wanted to admit. They wanted to say we've just, all of their talking points was like, hey, we've just passed the most significant most sweeping health reform bill in X number of decades. So it went against their talking points, and we saw those co-sponsors plummet. So many of them dropped off. But it is just a totally different world, the politics of Medicare for All these days. Mm-hmm. Back in those days, it was like we had to explain to a staffer what single-payer healthcare means. It would be like, it was literally like, what is Medicare for all first? And then if you get past that, then, and often they would sign onto the bill, I think, without even really knowing what it was. It would be like, all right, we're going to get our constituents off our back and just sign on to this bill, which makes it easier then to be like, all right, well, I'm not going to sign onto this bill now that I feel like it conflicts with the thing we just passed. But that's not, everyone knows what Medicare for all is now. It's the number one issue within the Democratic Party, within the fight within the Democratic Party. All staffers know what it is. They may not know all the details, but they understand Medicare for all, the term, basically what's at stake. And it's impossible for this issue to just be like swept under the rug now the way it was just, a few years ago. So I think that's a credit to the social movement that we've built since then. So
yeah, I can even see it in my own family. Like my
yeah.
dad finally understands what I do. After like 4 years of like having a drill
Right.
into CNN, he's like, "What is it?" I'm like, "It's what you have in Japan, Dad." It's like public health insurance. Come on. Yeah, so
This
that's been
helps a lot with family relations. So
exactly. Yeah.
all right. So I think we'll be after this, obviously, I think this was a surprisingly exciting bill drop and press conference. And there was just kind of nuggets of things to come and shifts happening in our movement that I think were interesting. But from now on, we'll probably be devoting a lot of podcast time to, what comes next in our movement, and really focusing on those remaining 104 Democratic reps in particular. And we will, in the show notes, we'll post a link to where you can find the list of original co-sponsors so you can see if your rep is on there or not. If they are not and you want to start pushing them, then please contact us and we will help you out.
Yes.
So
you
I
can't
feel
do
like
it by yourself. You got to have a group.
Yeah, a group and some backup with your friends at Healthcare Now. So it was an exciting start to the year, like legislative year for us, but all the real heavy lifting work is now ahead of us. So, but it was a good start. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
We'll talk to y'all next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.